Welcome to From the Ashes, the Dungeon Crawler Network podcast all about Ashes of Creation by Intrepid Studios. Bear witness to the rebirth of the MMORPG genre from the ashes of an industry that has left the gamers behind. I'm Aggelos, founder of the Dungeon Crawler Network, and we are coming to you live from the Mighty Beard Tavern. And I'm joined by my co-host. First off, we've got Alpha Soul.
What's up, guys? Glad to be here. A little bit of a throat thing going.
It happens, right? We're all sick almost all the time anyway, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, we also have returning Stormzlord.
What's up?
Okay, not giving me a lot to work with there, but that's okay, I guess. As you may know, I know, making me work for all this. It's kind of crazy. We are down a crowjack this evening. I think he fell into the ocean somewhere. Maybe ate some bad bait. I don't know. Yeah. You're not supposed to eat the bait. You're supposed to use it for fishing, and I think he ate it and got sick. It's okay. We still got a fun show planned for you guys this week. With Storms returning, we are going to talk a little bit about one of the content creator questions that we kind of left. We thought it was really interesting, but we left it anyway because, Storms has the biggest tech background here of all of us. I wanted to make sure he was available to discuss this. We also got a new Dev Diaries on their building tools. We'll definitely check that out. And, of course, we had a live stream on the 30th of April with some interesting information and some pretty cool Q&As that will pop through. So I hope you guys are going to enjoy that. Before we do that, of course, thank you so much to our awesome Twitch subs and patron supporters, including our newest patron supporter. I'm going to try to pronounce this. Enron? Enron, right? There you go. Sorry, it's EHRON. I don't know how to pronounce it, but thank you so much for supporting us over at patreon.com/Dungeon Crawler Network, as well as the awesome people who have subbed for 7, 3, and 8 months respectively: Woodchip, Rock My Burst, and Theater Elf on Twitch. You guys are amazing. And again, anyone who supports us via Patreon or Twitch gains access to our DCN supporters channel on our Discord, where you get access to all of our shows at least 24 hours early, as well as exclusive access to all of our post shows. So you get to wave that above everyone else and say, haha, I'm better than you because I get to listen to a bunch of guys talk about a game. Actually, I'm starting to depress myself. This is actually pretty sad. Please don't use that as an excuse not to do it. Anyway, if you want to help support us, you can also do that by leaving a 5-star review on iTunes so people know that we are a real podcast, that we say real words, and sometimes they matter. Obviously, Aaron, thank you. Twitch chat with the save. We haven't got any new iTunes reviews in a few days, so.
No, Alpha left his, so you know.
I know.
Yeah, leave another one.
Scared everyone off. We are still, I think it's 23 5-star reviews away from that giveaway. And time is slowly ticking down because this is episode 93. So make sure you get that in before episode 100 to help us push forward with that giveaway. Anyway, it's time to jump into the news. First up, content creator interview discussions. This was one that was actually taken from... my goodness, I'm going to draw a blank on how to pronounce everyone's name. Help me out. Jalan's stream.
Jala, I think. You know what? I'm not quite sure. I'm not going to even...
All right. Yeah. Awesome guy. Check out his stuff. I can't pronounce his name, but it doesn't really matter because you know what? I can't even pronounce my own name. I've been mispronouncing it for about 10 years now. Ask anyone who actually speaks Greek, and they will tell you that. Anyway... Are the 28 people in France working on AOC directly? Are they from a company called Stormancer? And this was an interesting answer. Stormancer is an integral third-party component for the game. We're using it for interfacing with our grid solution for seamless zone travel. Stormancer is capable of working with our design for that. The Malaysian team was an art asset team. We had disengaged with them and are looking for other solutions. First off, Malaysian team has been let go. Why? Because, I don't know.
Too much elf.
Too much elf stuff. Yeah, I agree. I don't know. But they got rid of the Malaysian team for the art asset. Now, what's really fascinating is these 28 people in France or whatever are actually third-party contractors. And I know Stormzlord, you looked a little bit into this product.
So, first of all, that's not the answer he gave. Right? He said the question was, are the 28 people in France working with AOC directly, or are they from Stormancer? He responds, Stormancer is this. We're using it for this. It is capable of this. Does not respond to the question of whether the 20 people work for Stormancer or themselves. So we don't know the answer, right? We can assume, but we don't know. But Stormancer is an integral part of that there. So what does that mean? They have a grid solution. In other words, they have a cluster setup of servers for portions of their land. That would be my guess based on that wordage. Could be wrong, but that would be my guess. You need to be able to travel from one zone to another without knowing it, if at all possible. One thing with, ESO, you can sort of see an indicator that you're coming up to a zone, and then you pause, and then you're in the other zone. It doesn't look like anything changed. The graphic looks the same. If you're going from, what's the one with the bridge? I can't remember. It's a bridge between two.
Oh, is it Deshaun and Stonefalls?
No, well, that might be, but I'm talking one up near the Breton portion, but that's okay. Either way, you're crossing a bridge, and on one side of the bridge, you see a bridge in front of you. When you get to the middle part, all of a sudden, there's like not a twitch, but it changes, and you're in the next zone. There's a little indicator. Take, for instance, Conan, same type of thing. You can tell there's a portion where you go from one to the next. Atlas, same way. Atlas is a little more visible. Your boat actually goes freaky, right? It freaks out and goes up and down in the waves, that's different. But with all of them, you can sort of see into the new zone. Anything static. You can't see typically players. You can see static of what's on the other side, right? So there's some sort of view into it. So there's different things when it comes to what Stormancer's doing. You have your zone travel, you have the visibility, and you have the visibility of static images and visibility of non-static images. One thing, so I think Atlas, for instance, again, at first, when you got to the edge of a zone, it was just a wall. Just a white wall. You really couldn't see much on the other side. A couple patches later, it was more waves, but they didn't always match the side you're on. Then they added, you could see waves, and they match the side you're on, and you could see the next island that's in the other zone, right? So you can see visibly into the other zone, but you can't see other players. So there could be, several ships on the other side. You just don't know until you cross the border. So they're working towards the part where you're going to be able to see static content in the other zone, as well as player content in the other zone. And Stormancer handles a whole bunch of things, as well as competitors handle that type of thing using messaging, right? So you're telling one cluster what's happening on the other side of the wall, and you've got to do that in real time if possible.
How are you going to accomplish this using their grid solution? How do you envision that they're going to use Stormancer to do that? Or how does the technology work?
It depends how it's set up, but one of those couple strategies or architectures I was looking at, you have clusters of servers, and then you have a messaging server in between them.
I actually posted an image that's in our background for you guys to see, so you guys can view that.
There you go.
Yeah. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, you'll actually be able to see what it is, hopefully a graphical representation of how this works. I'll post it in our chat too, so you can see it.
Yeah, so we can see it. I'd like to know what we're looking at. So you have these. So, okay, server nodes, right? And you have the arrows back and forth?
Yeah.
Those arrows back and forth, there's actually what's called usually MQ, right? You have a messaging system that take messages back and forth asynchronously. So it throws a message, and the one server has got to pick it up and then send it to the player, right? So your client is also another person. See the game there on the left? Pretend that's you. So one server node is telling the other server node what's going on over here. I've got a storm, I've got a whatever. On this server node, it knows what's going on, and then it sends it to the game, so the game or you know what's going on. So all this is going to happen asynchronously, and they get better at it as they go. Stormancer is, I don't know the technology because they haven't revealed that yet, but it's that same type of thing. They're going to use that to, I think, work with their cluster of servers to be able to have a seamless or hopefully seamless transition between zones.
I know one of the things that they're even talking about with Stormancer is the fact that they're actually building this from the ground up for cloud distributed services. The fact that they're using AWS, this is the solution that they're looking for in order to combine all of their nodes together. So that way, what we're going to see as a group would be one massive server. Let me take that back. One massive server as it appears to us, but the actual game server that you want to call server 1, server 2, server 3 would actually be made up of multiple servers, all connected via this cloud grid system.
Now, does that actually mean, and this is a question for both of you, does that mean that theoretically, like, let's say you and I both connect to a server, and I'm in New York City, since it's distributed on AWS, we're connecting to the same server, but technically we're on different AWS servers being housed, for whatever, better connection, better, whatever it may be. Is that true or not?
To an extent, but most cloud services route to a nearest possible node. So you would get a nearest possible node, but they wouldn't have that many nodes.
Think about it, like ESO, you're in Craiglorn, right?
Yeah.
There are multiple instances of Craiglorn, not just one, right? So if you're in Varen or whatever, however they break up the zones, there are going to be multiple zones of that, multiple servers of there. And usually what they try to do is they try to connect you to the closest one, right? But you never know. With this whole thing floating, honestly, right now, take for instance in Atlas, all the servers are hosted in Germany, whether they're the North American quote unquote servers or the European servers, they're hosted in Germany. The ping is phenomenal. Right. It doesn't matter where we play. It's a matter of what node is the most responsive, regardless of, I hate that word, regardless of ping, right? You want to keep the lowest ping. Physical location doesn't matter. It's your ping. Right. Because you may be faster to the closest city. You may be faster to New York than Detroit or vice versa. It just depends on the layout.
So I'm actually getting a little confused because I thought, so I know you're using the ESO example, but the ESO example to me is slightly different in that it doesn't necessarily really matter which server or node that you connect to, right? As far as your relation to the other world. If Ashes is trying to do these worlds where certain people control certain territories, I almost think that you can't use the same quote unquote model. Like the way that I had pictured in my head was you have, maybe one of these servers controls a grid the size of the battle royale, if you will, and then you move on to the next if you go out into another area, and so on, and it kind of cascades itself into you.
And part of the ESO model is because they use that layering technology that you would be able to connect to a server that would have the better ping. That's still the same zone, but as you said, there were multiple different instances or different layers of each potential zone. What they're trying to accomplish here is the ability to have, and I seen chat talking about this, Broken brought this up, about hopefully they don't have these invisible walls that you transition. I believe this is the software, the solution that they are trying to implement.
You shouldn't see it.
To prevent that invisible wall that you teleport to a new zone. It's a seamless handoff where when you get close to a quote unquote zone wall, you won't know it's a zone wall.
Right.
But when you pass through it, it does that handshake between the server you're on and the server you're going to and pulls you across. And you are technically on an entire different piece of hardware than you were before.
Now, the interesting part for at least for me, the Alpha Soul's comment about, you have one castle, right? One node retaining over everything. You're assuming that one node can't maintain over all instances of that area. So, say we control Capital One, right?
Yeah.
Capital One could be on and above 7 or 8 different servers of the same instance. Right? It's going to depend how they're going to set it all up. I don't know.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It's going to depend how they're going to do that.
They could
You can
use
keep
that
those in
same.
sync?
Yeah, they would.
Yeah.
They would replicate between each other.
Those arrows are insanely fast messaging queues, right? Every little thing is being kept in sync with those little queues.
I see what you're saying. Got it.
At least based on what I've read and how I'd lay it out myself.
Yeah.
Right? So you could have, the main capital, and there could be several different instances below it. You wouldn't know which one you're on. Now, what they're going to have to figure out is how do you keep a group of people together?
ESO did that fairly well when it comes to things such as if you're in a group, if you're in a guild, if you're in an alliance, you can pull those commonality factors together. Friendsless, that's how they did how they eventually got rid of, I shouldn't say got rid of, but the phasing technology that they used, it would actually group your character with people that you had a commonality with, some sort of commonality, and depending on how many layers of commonality you had, it pulled it together. And I understand the idea of this game being very active and reactive and things growing, but Storm's made a great point with how fast it's transferring data between the multiple servers. There can be 20 different variations of a same zone, and it just passes the information back and forth. That way the nodes are there. But what happens is when something is coming on, such as a node siege, it consolidates all those instances down into one. That way all the fighting is in one area. Now that's going to have to really...
They're going to have to figure that part out,
Yeah.
right? Because what you're going to have that is I would think more of a mega instance when you want to have everybody in at once. It depends how you want to do it.
If you're going to do that mega instance at that point, then you then just shrink all those down or turn them off and reroute the data to the mega server, and then bring them back.
But they've got to figure out how to do it. Because Stormancer is the first, or as far as I can tell, based on what I've read, Intrepid is the first one to use Stormancer in an MMO type situation. There's a whole bunch. There's like 5 or 6, 7, 8 other games, but they're not an MMO. So it's going to be a different way of looking at it. There's other ones out there. There's I can't remember the name of them that have done MMOs, but Stormancer has not. Stormancer started in 2014.
So this has actually been incredibly helpful because it answered that. There's a question in the back of my head that I haven't voiced, and that's, how Intrepid was constantly saying, hey, we're trying to hit, like, hooray, we hit 200, 300 people or whatever. And in the back of my head, I was kind of like, who the hell cares if it's if it's going to be, these massive battles and you have, these instances where, castles come under siege and it's server-wide events and your servers are 10,000 people. Who the hell cares about 200, 300 people? It's
what you call a server at 10,000 people, right? It's not one server. It's going to be slices of different servers. So that's going to be very interesting how they pull that architecture together.
Right. And this actually makes me I know we talked about the 10,000 people on a server, the way they described it, and I didn't even think about technology in this relationship. It's not 10,000 people on a server. Not one individual server that's sitting up there. It's using one of these grid solutions in order to fool you into thinking. So when you're signing in and you select whatever server Vero 1, you're seeing one server, right? That is what you are going for.
Yeah.
And that's all you see. But that's actually a collection of, I don't know, 100 servers, whatever they would need.
Think about it this way. Atlas sits on 255 servers. One version of Atlas, right? So again, the size-wise, you got to think about how big that's going to be and how the different players interact. But they were saying the same thing. We could have 40,000 players on a server. Well, they don't mean one grid, right? They don't mean one server. They mean a particular set of those servers. So it's going to be interesting on how Intrepid pulls it off.
Indeed. I'm actually really curious how they would use this. Well, I mean, I guess if you buy an expensive enough server, it can hold a lot of connections.
Or you Amazon it. Right? AWS it. You don't need to. You let it cluster up, cluster down based on your need. Right?
I'm referring to the idea of the siege mechanic where you need to represent possibly thousands of players. I guess it also depends on Amazon's pricing model, right? Like, are they willing to, on the fly, go, all right, we'll let you have 8,000 people on a server, but you're going to pay for it?
Their pricing model currently does.
It does.
Their pricing model adjusts with what you're using, right? That's one of the interesting things about AWS is you can, rent one for yourself, right? You rent just one. As you use more, it charges you a little more. Same thing with the cluster solution. As you need more, it replicates it out. And what it does is it spins them up ahead of time. So as you're getting, I don't know what threshold, I would probably say half of one server, it starts to spin the next server up. So that when you fill server 2, server 3 is already ready to go. Messaging is already moving. The queue is already picking it up and knows what's happening. Because remember, you just only have, if you have a cluster of servers, you have server 1 talking to server 2. You have server 2 talking to server 3. But you also have server 3 talking to 4 and 2. And then, how they all them all set up visibility-wise from each one. You have all these messages flying fucking forth.
Steven Sharif in the chat room says, Grid facilitates what we call a distributed service, which allows multiple server nodes to spin up as necessary to process thousands of client connections.
So
awesome. See?
So I got to admit a second thing now. So I use AWS at work too, but on a much smaller scale because it's for content management systems. Right? But there's one quote that I've kind of been hanging on to, and that's the fact that I think they were gunning for Ashes of Creation being the first MMO that has a successful launch and that is not like, are we on the PG-13 portion?
I believe so.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the family friendly version.
All right, that is not a poop show. And I think one of the things that MMO companies struggle with is balancing out how many servers they need because they're at physical locations versus what they think the influx is going to be. And it looks like, and it seemed like most companies in the past have always erred on the side of, well, we don't want to spin up too many, otherwise it's a complete waste of money, and then they get hit hard, they spin up, and then people fail, and then it goes. I really like the fact that this appears to be a flexible model that will expand or has the potential to expand quickly as demand goes up. So that puts me in a little bit more of a faithful, I guess you could say, interpretation of what of a successful launch, if you will. For the
I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
We got way more airtime out of that than I thought we would. So I'm so glad we waited to talk about this one. This technology really, really fascinates me from a technological standpoint and seeing I know from a business perspective what it's used for. I've dealt with it not with a bunch of different vendors who use similar grid-based technologies and cloud-based technologies in order to provide DRBCP, disaster recovery, business continuity planning, stuff like that, and pulling all of that stuff together. But seeing the potential from a passion that I have, which would be online gaming, creating these online worlds, this is something that really has me excited. And I noticed that Stormancer is one of those that's trying to focus on gaming more so than other solutions which have more of a business focus.
Absolutely. I saw 3 main competitors, or 2 other main competitors that did just the same thing. So definitely picking one that focuses on games is going to help.
And thank you, Rock My Burst, for gifting Steven with a tier 1 sub. Welcome to the Shield Wall, Steven. As always. Excellent. All right, moving on to the next bit of news. This is coming out of Intrepid Studios. Once again, bringing us one of their amazing Developer Diaries, the building tool. We'll go ahead and cue that up for you guys right now.
I'm Devin LaFontaine. My job title is Senior Environment Artist at Intrepid Studios. Most of what I do here is focused on natural environments, so terrain, trees, grasses, that kind of stuff. I also deal a fair bit amount with lighting and also technical kind of process stuff that we do in the background to support the whole art team. The housing tool was designed mostly originally as a way to make houses quickly and make them run really well. And we identified some ways in Apocalypse that we could have improved the way the buildings were set up. And in doing all of the performance improvements that we ended up doing near the end of that project, I learned a lot of things about
First off, I don't know if anyone noticed, but anyone see the little
so the housing tool was
Phoenix
focused a lot on that, and
roof?
also making it easy for the whole team to build a bunch of buildings, because we're going to need many buildings for the nodes.
Oh, I see it.
Ashes of Creation is a very large and ambitious project. We have 9 different races that need to be represented from an architectural standpoint in each of the nodes. As players move throughout the world and establish these cities, you're going to see manifested in real time each of these cultures in some way, shape, or form. In order for us to accomplish the creation of these vast cities and multitudes of buildings, what Devin's been working on with this tool really allows the artist to swap in different modular pieces to create diverse and unique buildings within the node system. Now, obviously, this tool doesn't accommodate all of the features we want to see from an architectural standpoint in the cities. There are still going to be need for one-offs and custom created assets that represent perhaps the central building within a city or the unique social organizations that exist. These will still need to be completed separate from a modular set.
So one of the things that I learned when building all the POIs in Apocalypse was the quantity of items that we had to render. And it was pretty expensive, and there's a lot of technology in Unreal that helps reduce that we wanted to start using more for the MMO. So the housing tool is very heavily reliant on some of that tech. So the first thing it had to do was be performant, so it could render lots and lots of buildings pretty easily. It also had to be easy to manage for the art team and the artists building the pieces that comprise a finished house. And it also had to be easy for anyone on the team to use. The designers could use it and not really have any headaches or any confusion as to what they're doing. The one thing I really like about working on these games is watching players discover them. So I'm really eager for the community to hop into the game and see all the stuff we've been doing, because it's really fun making it, and there's a lot of cool stuff that we want to share.
One of the paramount goals at Intrepid is to create the ultimate immersive experience where players, as they explore and search the far reaches of Vera, they get to experience this vast diversity and culture through the different cities that they'll come across. Really putting the players in the story, making them feel a part of the world. That's one of our primary objectives.
First off, I do have to say, this guy is responsible for the catfall boots hiding in the tree situation, because he was creating the tree that you could jump on top of, and catfall boots land on the dead center of it and be hanging up in the air.
Oh.
That's the reference I was making on that one.
Gotcha.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I actually like this series, and you could tell right off the bat that these videos were taken from a little while ago, being done as part of APOC. Everything was there. The idea that they're building these very quick modular pieces is interesting. And it allows, I guess, the thing that interests me the most is the procedural tool that they will be able to use to here's a bunch of Lego pieces. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Now, I've had issues with procedural generation. Thankfully, they recognize this as being an issue. Procedural generation is computer smart. And if anyone knows anything, computers aren't smart. They're not.
Yeah.
They have a logic. They'll put a logic together, but the logic doesn't always work as we see it from an aesthetically pleasing thing.
It's a good way to start something. It's a quick way to start a piece. You need to, at least now, take it to the next step. Once you procedurally generate something, go in and you enhance it with your own stuff. You need to beautify it. You need to whatever you need to do to make it do what you want it to do, because you're right. It's only so smart.
I mean, let's face it. We've all been there a few times where you're trying to use the camouflage in APOC and all of a sudden turning into a bush in the center of a... You're on a marble floor. Bush. In the middle of a forest. A chair. It's like, ouch.
That always got me. There are a couple people who managed to win a couple of the BRs using the polymorph invis strategy of just like no absolute or any conflict. That never works for me simply because of the polymorph. I've had maybe 2 successful. The rest just like utter, like, just failures. Obvious utter failures.
A big bright neon sign. Alpha's here. Huh. Yeah, I think every time I've used the polymorph, I've not really had anything that was so painfully obvious, but it was something like I'm close to a road, sorta, and it turns me into like a lamppost. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Getting there, but just not yet.
Yeah, casual observer would be like, yeah, okay, I could see that, but
There was one time actually, and I have it on video. I'll share it with you guys later, maybe in the post show.
Yeah.
Where I was up against the wall and I polymorphed, and it turned me into like a lamp that was attached to the wall. It was really cool. It was one of the very few times that it ever worked, and I actually killed somebody with it when they came running.
I think it'd be good once it's good enough to know what's around, right?
Yeah.
But just again, that's a feature that'll get there.
Right.
That I have no doubt about that.
Right. I think the thing that is tools like this are cool because it allows for them to move forward as a team. It feels like a lot of waste of time. For those of you who are still waiting for the game to come out, I know this feels like, oh, great. They're working on these tools, this building tool, and they could be actually placing stuff in the game. Yes, you're right. But tools like this actually allow the uninitiated, the less skilled people.
The art department. Kidding.
Well, like they said on the live stream, I don't know how to use ZBrush. I can't make my own models. This would allow them to be able to
Absolutely.
do
It's
stuff
a
with
must. It really is.
Yeah.
If you think about it, the ESO tool that they've given as the housing tool, that was the tool they used in ESO to build the ESO.
Right. Oh, and their housing tool is fantastic. It's very in depth, but we won't see this per se. Again, going down into the Q&A that we'll be talking about briefly, that they won't have that. The other thing that's neat from this perspective that I saw they talked about is the idea that because they're creating these, I guess, a lot of modular pieces. I'm curious to see how well it does in terms of optimization. They mentioned that as a selling point, that because they're going to be prefabbing these things, that it would actually be optimized for when you're using them in very large situations, large cities and stuff of that nature. Storms, what are your thoughts on that?
It's going to depend.
Okay. Depend on anything else?
Well, yes. If you really want, you want to get into it, right? It's not going to work. I don't know.
Okay. All right.
You know.
Okay. Well, Alpha, you can get up to the same level of eloquence as Stormzlord here by just be like,
You can
depends.
You can try.
That's true. Wait, sorry. What's the question?
Okay, now you lost it. All right. I mean, I got a very non sequitur answer out of Storms. It's like, all right, well, thanks for that one. You had your opportunity to at least meet that level, and you lost.
Somehow
it.
I didn't make it.
Yeah, you know.
You made it worse somehow. I don't. All right. Anyway, Dev Diaries, really cool. I like to see this because it's a way for us to actually get to see the developers, get to see what they're working on. And if you've done any kind of development in the past or have been around the block a few times, it's nice to see progress on this level. Moving on to the last bit of news that we have tonight. We had a new live stream on the 30th of April, and there were a few updates that we thought were pretty neat and a nice Q&A. Now, one of the things right off the bat that I know Steve and Jeff and Margaret, I just drew a blank on. I am the worst when it comes to names. It's actually sad. There's a few times, even at the start of the show, I have to sit and think about who I have on the show. And I've been doing this with you guys now for years.
Alpha who?
Alpha, yeah, names. Anyway, my little brain problems aside, moving on. They actually talked about having their first mayor election within their private instance of the games, showing that the system, it does work. Again, we didn't see it. They just said it was a nice little mini development milestone that they actually had an election process for one of the nodes, and a mayor was elected. I guess one of the issues is the NPC, the magistrate who shows up that you actually work from, then stopped working. Isn't that how coding always works? You fix one thing and then everything else breaks. Anyways, that was pretty cool. They were able to elect a mayor. They launched a caravan across the map, and it crashed and flipped in a fiery death of doom and physics. We saw that in the past, too.
Sounds like number one.
Yeah.
That happens. Physics is terrible.
It is.
It's mean.
It is. It's actually when they did a caravan back during PAX West 2017, I think it was. And they tried to show a caravan, and it started like riding sideways. It was crazy. So that's pretty cool. And they do plan on showing that stuff off, but they need to get it cleaned up a little bit first. So
That's how you all know we don't live in a matrix situation. Things work too well here. They would, if we were, they would fall apart. You'd see stuff shooting off the side.
Next up, they actually have some new hires. They brought on a new character artist who just finished a new mesh for the Dawnbreaker. Dawnbreaker. Which I think, is that one of the Kickstarter mounts?
It sounds really familiar.
Sounds familiar.
Oh, I gotta look that up. I'm pretty sure it's one of the Kickstarter mounts. Wiki, soon TM.
Yes. Wait. Yes, it is.
You found it faster than I did.
It is a Kickstarter gliding mount from the Braver of Worlds package.
Right.
Yeah. It looks like an owl bear, sort of.
That is really weird looking.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a really small image, or else all right, you know what? I'm going to put this up on the screen. For those of you who don't remember what this thing actually was, I'm going to go ahead and show off the one piece of art that we got back during the Kickstarter.
Oh, that's cool. Wait, I'm not sure how they're going to do that, but it says Dawnbreaker mount changes colors based on the player's mood.
Uh-oh.
Roleplay? I don't know.
No, I'm looking at the description. That's what it says.
Mood in like real life? Are we like a mood ring stick on your mouth, or what's going on?
Like if you do an angry emote, maybe it goes red.
No.
I'm just guessing.
You hook
A
it to the
moon
Corsair
ring.
keyboard and you're good.
That's what we need to call it from now on, the mood ring mount.
There you go.
Yeah. It says up there on the screen for those of you who are watching us on youtube.com/Dungeon Crawler Network. I don't know what it looks like. All I can say is this thing is doing some serious preacher curls because those biceps are ripped.
Yeah, look at that.
Doing
like
some
a pit bull's neck.
those triceps, man. I tell you what. Whew. Anyway,
Yeah.
kind of creepy. I don't know. I don't know. I'm sort of torn. And again, this goes back to my own personal love of somewhat realism. I know I have that, but I probably won't ever use it due to the fact that I'm spoiled by just liking a normal horse.
See, no, I like some of the more unique mounts.
I do like me some unique mounts. Actually, not sure what I'll wear.
I don't know yet. We'll see what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
Give me my horse. My horse is amazing.
I don't know. One of my favorite mounts right now is to fight between an ostrich and a bear. So they're both really good.
Horrendous in chat actually called you out, Storms. Space turtle.
Oh, that was an awesome one. Wasn't that a group mount though?
I don't
I thought
know.
that was for a group,
It might be.
which is cool. I love Space Turtle, but
Right. I know. Didn't
That
you
is
buy the
unique.
space turtle?
I unfortunately did not. It was in my cart, but I never bought it.
Oh, no.
But oh no, I shall be forever Space Turtleless.
That's a shame.
It is.
Last thing that they said, lots of back-end stuff with Apocalypse is getting finalized. We'd say we're at the last 10%. Hit detection, input feeling, and the UI has something that needs some finalization. Guys, we might actually get a chance, and I'm just going to pull this out here. We might see APOC testing come back fairly soon.
I would be good with that.
Maybe in the summer is when we'll see
I'm
it.
very good with that.
Yeah. I really hope they, because he mentioned that they were doing some tweakings and balancing and things of that nature to things. One of the things that I really hope that they do is either make a decision on the ranged weapons. In other words, all hit scan or all projectile, or somehow make the projectile ones more viable than what they are.
I think there's a balance. Yeah, honestly, I think that you're right. You need to have a balance between them and make the projectile better at what they're doing and make a good choice between the two. Because it's really awesome to be able to take a bow and hit at a target. You have to guess the whole projectile, right? That's awesome to me, but you're not going to get a projectile out of a wand. So you got to, to me, pick and choose between it, how it's going to work. I don't think a bow should be hit scan. That I don't. That should have projectile. But something like a wand of light, that's hit scan, right?
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess what I'm trying to, what I want to see more of is an actual choice between what you're picking up. For some reason, rather than it just being flat out better. Because when we left off, Nightfall Bowl, all the way, unless you were gonna hit a stationary target that was not gonna move, you just give me the Nightfall Bow. That's it, right?
Yeah, Cam in chat saying that too. Give me Nightfall or give me Death. There have been so many times we've been running with guildies. It's like you could be carrying a legendary miasma bow, and the blue Nightfall would drive. You're like, done. I don't even care.
Yeah, they have to pick and choose between it, and I think it's a good balancing to it. But there should be a choice.
Yeah.
But there should also be a downfall for hit scan. There should be something that makes it not work that way.
Right. Yeah. Agreed.
I'm of the opinion that they really should just, I don't know. The idea that projectile within an MMO, I just don't think it works very well. Because latency is such a big factor.
Actually, I disagree.
Okay.
With the big battles that have been in Atlas, I disagree. Because all the cannonballs are projectiles, all the arrows are projectiles, and you have to balance those out. All they really don't have any hit scan. Really think about it, but to balance all that out and to be able to sit there and think about, okay, so this particular person is riding a lion. Well, they're going to jump, so I've got to wait for that lion to make its particular tell before it jumps to shoot it. you got to know then not only shoot it, but what's the projectile. I have a crossbow, so the projectile is less than a regular bow. So you have to think that through, right? With the cannons, you have to do the same thing. Okay, so if I fire this cannon, if I do a large, it's going to go slower but do more damage than a medium. So to me, it's interesting.
Yeah. I agree with you, Storms. I would prefer it to be projectile. I just want it to be projectile where you can consistently get a feel for what it's actually doing, right?
Yes.
Even no matter how we played the BR for a while, and that was probably the only game where I played with a projectile that I could not predictably land my bow. Or land the longbow unless they were standing still, right?
Wow.
And then it was like, and then the ones that I did hit that were off were just I more chalked up to luck because I really wasn't fully expecting them.
Right.
There just was a disconnect between that I didn't like.
They just have to work on the physics of the projectile and how it replicates with things going on around it.
Yeah.
And maybe that was the reason why I wasn't real fond of the projectile weapons, because the tells that you had weren't... I don't know. It could have just been me, but I didn't feel like they actually displayed information correctly in a way that I could tell what was going on.
Right, you're right.
Meaning, I'd shoot a longbow miasma, the light would go, but that light that represented the arrow, the projectile, didn't line up with what the projectile was actually doing.
Oh, see, if you're going to do a projectile, your animation has to match the object, right?
Right.
So, again, figuring on Atlas, but the cannonball, you can see it launch, you can see it curve over, you can see it go where it's going to go. Same thing with an arrow. When I'm shooting at a distance at something, I've got to figure out how far above I got to be based on what's happening. Yeah. And then you can watch it go up. You can't see it hit unless you pull out your scope and look at it, right?
Right.
See it hit because you can see the hit mark. But it's interesting. I'd like to see that in APOC.
Yeah, absolutely. I was not arguing, but I was actually talking with Baron from our guild.
Okay, yeah.
And he was telling me, you just gotta aim your shot. And I was like, well, I mean, he was like, aim your shot. I think he said like a half a centimeter off, and I'm like, well, at what distance are you talking about that I should be doing that? Because it's gonna change how close or far, and then there's just no feedback, to give you. Yeah, whatever.
No, and feedback's a good example, because I don't know if there were times early on where it felt like, well, and I know it was the case, the hit scans had like an unlimited range.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You were getting tapped from at furthest possible range. You couldn't even see anything.
You're across the map going, what?
Yeah. So I've been killed by people, like, I couldn't even see them because I had my graphics turned all the way up. That's where we had talked about if you turned them all the way down so you could see people, that was whatever. But I know they changed that, so that was good. But
that was a good change, yeah.
I still couldn't get a reasonable expectation as to what the drop-off was, if any, for projectiles. And the animations never lined up with the actual hits. Like, it would register a hit for somebody, but the projectile landed nowhere near them. Other times the projectile goes like through their character model, and yet it still misses. So
they got to work on that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah, I think that's what they are working on now. So should be. Yeah.
The other question is the validity of having projectiles in a tab target game, because remember, the hybrid system's a mixture of the two. Does full projectile even work in a tab target? I mean, I guess it could, but it would essentially be no different than, aimbotting, essentially. Just illegal aimbot.
That's what it is, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. After playing a non-tab target game, I prefer non-tab target. Because to me, it's more of a learning curve.
Sure.
To using particular weapons, right? Whether I'm going to use a carbine and take them out a half mile away, or I'm going to use an arrow and still take them out, maybe a quarter mile away. I got to learn how to do it. To me, that made a huge difference between the two.
Yeah, gotcha.
Nice. All right. Well, I guess the last thing we'll talk about here before we wrap up for this evening is, of course, the fact they talked about freehold skins and their building system, where as of currently, one of the things is freeholds just take over an entire building. So the freehold skins you're buying, you can't piecemeal them like you can with the modular system, at least as of right now. I don't know if that's really a plus or a negative. I guess in my mind it's a plus because I am not creative. I was talking to Crojack about all these really creative games, and it's like, I'm gonna build a castle like Versailles or something like that, and then by the time I'm done, I'm like, I have made an amazing square. Like, that's literally all I can do. So I'm not all that creative. Everything I try to make creative ends up looking like garbage. So I'm sort of okay with that, but there's a lot more creative people than I am. All right. That's going to be the end of our show tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to jump into the Q&A, but we are already nearing our cutoff for the night, so instead of diving into that, we'll save that for a later time. So again, I want to thank my awesome co-hosts. First and foremost, we got Alpha Soul of the _alpha_soul. Does all of his videos on, Ashes of Creation. Check out all of his recaps and his discussion videos on his YouTube channel. And of course, Stormzlord, the owner and lead developer of Digital Piper Studios. Check out all of his games that he has Android, iOS, and all that fun stuff. Anyway, you can follow me, DungeonCrawlerNetwork.com, where you can really find all of us at this point. You can find links to all of our social media, including Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. Be sure to check out our Patreon program, patreon.com/DungeonCrawlerNetwork. If you want to help support the show, you can also do so by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes so people know that we are a real podcast, that we say real words. Sometimes they matter. Thank you again so much for joining us on this episode of From the Ashes, and we will see you next time. See you later, everybody.